So here's a photo which got me started on this. This is from Moor Studios, Gaumont British Animation. And this man was identified as a gentleman named Ralph Wright, who's an illustrator. You can look him up. He won an Academy Award for Winnie the Pooh, but he really looked quite a bit like Bela Lugosi. And from him, I was able to identify almost everybody else in the photo. I call him my index person, who's a person of focus. And what I did was look up people related to Bela Lugosi, and I found Ed Wood in the same photo as a guy named Doug Lowe. This is a big problem if you know the history of the two of them. Dr. Frankenstein, Colin Clive, and this is Peter Cushing. And we identified just about all of them using Bela Lugosi. Now, sometimes I went from one person to another and used somebody else to find somebody else, but he was the person who got me started. And this is where I left off, somewhere in the middle of part 3. And I promised I would do this slide, but it was going to open up a whole can of worms, and you'll see that this is the case. I identified this woman as Bette Davis. I did it strictly on look, and you'll see in a little bit that I'm correct on this because I'm going to identify these two by showing you what films the three of them were in together. So she's identified as a woman named Jean Woods. This is Waclaw Mahan and Bettina Hansford. So we look at films using Bette Davis as our index person. We look at films of Bette Davis and see if we can identify somebody in a picture that looks like him. And sure enough, here we find a guy named John Dahl, and this is virtually an identical match. Same kind of oval face, a little bit of roundness, sleepy eyes here, brow, hair. This is the same man here, and he appeared in a film with Bette Davis called The Corn is Green. Now, I couldn't find Bettina Hansford in a photo with Bette Davis, at least who I discovered she was. So I used John Dahl, and he becomes our index person. And who do I find but Deanna Durbin? And Deanna Durbin was a very significant actress of her time. You cannot find too many films of her. They have never released them. They released them once, I believe, on VHS, and there's a good reason why they didn't release her on VHS, and you'll see that in a little while. So using Bette Davis, who I identified strictly by her look, and I have her somewhere else, I found John Dahl. So here's a film with Davis and Dahl and Deanna Durbin, and here's a film with Deanna Durbin and John Dahl. It's called Something in the Wind, and Donald O'Connor's in there, and I am looking for him as well. All right, now you wonder how can these two people be the same person, and despite some very similar feature, Deanna Durbin has a much fuller look, fuller cheeks and features. They do look similar but not identical, and so why is that? I mean, the hair looks pretty good, same kind of color, quality, texture to it, you know, same kind of brow. But again, these big cheeks are an issue, and the reason they don't look exactly the same is movie magic. Makeup, synthetic prosthetics applied to the cheeks, bridge of nose, and chin to give a more rounded appearance. So you look, these big, full, lush-looking cheeks and face, and here again, here as well. This one really looks sort of fake, giving a plastic sort of appearance. This is sort of a more natural look. It's a grainy photo though. Now in the next picture I'm going to give an extreme example, so brace yourselves. And this is Jack Nicholson, and I suspect this is what he looks like under his makeup. I don't know if they've added anything, but you can see lines and wrinkles and whatnot to him, and here he is as the Joker. And yeah, I suspect this is his look, but you can see that that they have applied prosthetics here. You can see the bulging cheeks, and they make him that little bit of comical, sinister look to him by applying latex prosthetics to his face. And And here again, you have Deanna Durbin. It's kind of a very unnatural mask-like look, and they've done something here, and I'm not sure why they've done it. They've done a little bit of cover-up work here, but you can see the unnatural look. Here's the extreme example of it, but they put on these latex appliances or whatever they were made of at the time and give it a nice lush look, and these people underneath it look quite different. Jack Nicholson, of course, very identifiable. And sometimes things go very wrong with these appliances. So Sidney Poitier winning an Oscar for Lilies of the Field, great film, great actor. But for whatever reason, they apply these latex prosthetics to his face. And in his case, this one has separated off the nose and probably off the cheek. And how did this occur? This is the same evening. Again, he's holding Oscar. Here he's got sort of a closed mouth, and the prosthetics lay on top of him. They're pretty rigid. And when somebody smiles, it lifts the face underneath, and it'll lift it actually under the prosthetics. Prosthetics won't move quite as readily. So he's got a big fat smile here. He's happy to win an Oscar. He's very pleased, and the prosthetic is no longer on the face. Again, the face has really lifted under the prosthetic, and you can see the separation. Here you can sort of make it out. It's not as obvious, but there's a different shine to it, a different reflection, and different texture as you go from what may be natural skin over here to the prosthetic. But here, this is a drastic example. So Sidney does not look like this under the makeup. I mean, he looks somewhat like it, but again, they have applied these prosthetics and something to his teeth. I have no idea what they've done here with his teeth, but whatever it is, it's very unnatural appearance. And here is Deanna Durbin with a man who is called, I think it's like her second husband or third, I've lost track, but I don't believe this is her husband necessarily. And here's the product of their union, somebody's union. But you can see the prosthetics here on the face. It's got a little bit of a barbell look, goes from one cheek over the nose, and the other one may come down over the chin as well. It probably does, and it's applied maybe in one piece. I'm not 100% sure, but again, big problem, again, smiling, because the skin separates from the latex prosthetic, and you can see the opening here. So you actually can see a little bit underneath the prosthetic, and again, kind of a shiny appearance to it. The rest of the skin looks dull in comparison. And this is not just some sunburn or some rosacea, and there's some blurring here. They may have tried to alter the picture in a little bit, but here you can see another example of that prosthetic for Deanna Durbin. And here's where it gets particularly interesting. So there's a picture of young Deanna Durbin I found, and I looked at her and I recognized her as somebody else of historical significance. And it's only from doing this for a couple of years that I think I've developed an eye to do this, but I believe I'm correct, and I'll produce enough evidence to show you who she is. And this is the woman I believe she is. I recognized her as being her from pictures I have studied of this woman, and there is a look about them which is very, very similar, despite they may have put in contact lenses in one of them, and she's much younger. My belief is it's the same person, and I will prove it. And this woman, brace yourselves, is Eva Braun, who is Hitler's mistress, and for 40 hours his wife. So you can't just say that Bettina Hansford, Deanna Durbin is Eva Braun. You're really going to have to prove it, and I'm going to do that. So let's start out comparing some other photos. So here's Deanna Durbin. I purposefully looked for photos where there was a lot of similarities. So here's Eva Braun, and we have the same kind of look, same kind of smile. Again, very unnatural here, sort of a little bit more natural look. But again, these are still prosthetics that they've applied. Here they've overdone it on Deanna Durbin. It's a little bit of a clown-like appearance. and another picture of them. Here's a different look for the two of them with darker hair. Um, this is probably, again, a slightly more natural look. Here they really blow up that face, but similar features. I found one of Deanna Durbin with sort of a kinky looking mousy brown hair, and similar hair quality here, so a much older woman. So we're still going to need to provide you with more proof. So what I've done is I dug up a photo of Eva Braun, and this is a staged photo. These people are actors, and they're put here with Eva Braun, who I believe is Deanna Durbin, also Bettina Hansford. And again, it's reckless for me to say it without proving it, so I'm going to give you proof right now. So this is Eva Braun. And if she's Deanna Durbin, and I believe this is a staged photo, then I should be able to identify most, if not all, of the people in this photograph, which I do. So I'm going to look for photographs of Deanna Durbin and look for other people who've starred in movies with Deanna Durbin and see if they turn up in this photo. Again, this is Eva Braun, and the gentleman here is Hermann Fagelin. And Hermann Fagelin was General of the Waffen SS and murdered a whole slew of civilians in a punitive operation. And there's Eva Braun, some history on her if you want to look at it, but let's go focus on this picture. So here's Eva Braun. And again, this is going to be very difficult to wrap your mind around, but we're going to start with this